All right, guys, just getting started with tonight's live stream just a few minutes early. I always like to do that just to make sure everything's situated and in place, and just to make sure that it's working the way it should be. This is an Ask Me Anything video, as most of these live streams are, and we're kind of back on our regular schedule here. I apologize for those of you who probably feel like you got a little late notice on this one. For whatever reason, I just didn't post up the live stream link until only about an hour ago. So I'm sorry if some of you feel like kind of a late notice. I do try to put it out on the community notice on YouTube, as well as try to send it out on the Facebook. But in both my We the Governed page and also my personal page, don't always catch the Facebook group, but I do try to get it out there a little bit earlier so that you'd actually have a little better notice. But we'll have to deal with just getting it out when we do. And thanks for everybody who is logging in. The quick little update: if I saw you last week, thank you so much for coming up and chatting with me. I just did a whole series of events. I was in Skagit County, and I was up in Bellingham, and I went up on Thursday to train new school board members. I know on Saturday I was up at San Juan County, and I spoke at the San Juan County Party Convention. And in between all those, had a lot of meetings with activists. You know who you are, just on a variety of projects, kind of in that Northwest Washington mainly, this last week, and it was just a lot of good progress I think made in just reaching out and talking to a lot of people. Probably, I don't know how many people I actually spoke in front of. The Sunday county convention in San Juan County had a couple of candidates running for statewide office there. We had Dave Reichert was up there, and also Dave Olson, who's running for OSPI, one of, I believe, 3 Republicans in the state that's running for Office Superintendent of Public Instruction. So anyway, there was a lot going on last week. And if you saw me dealing with my randomly changing vehicle selection, since one of my cars, I just drive these little cheap cars around the state. Many people know if you've seen some of my videos before. So one of them blew up recently, and it was the end. I put about 90,000 miles in that vehicle in the last couple of years, so it was probably due to eventually go. So that vehicle is gone, and so that was it. One of the things that I try to start out some of these videos with by request is just mentioning a few places that I will be speaking at, or where you'd have an opportunity to come up and chat with me if you want to ask me questions directly rather than through the live stream. And the first one is I am planning to be at the February 23rd Let's Go Washington rally at the state capitol, just in encouraging the Democrats to actually have a hearing of all things for the 6 initiatives, as they are legally required and historically have always done. But of course, right now, the Democrats are terrified of the initiatives. They're afraid of them. They don't even want to talk about them. They're avoiding the subject like the plague, and they don't want to have that hearing. So we're going to do a rally up there demanding that they're going to hear it. Based on what the Let's Go Washington folk have on their front page of their website, it looks like John Carlson will be there. Also Brian Haywood himself, the guy that sponsored it and who's getting villainized in the Seattle Times and by the left all over the place. So you have an opportunity to see Brian Haywood in person if you come to that event as well. Also, if you are in the Okanagan, I will be out there. I think I'm going to be in Omak, actually. I should double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's Omak that I'll be in on February 29th. If I have just stated the wrong city, I'll correct it in my next live stream. But I will be out in Okanagan on the 29th. It's a bit of a drive. I live in South Thurston County, so a bit of a drive to get out there. But I am planning to be there, and it's 6 to 8 p.m. And that's leap year, or leap day for February 29th. And I'll be doing a presentation to young activists out there just on the importance of being engaged and involved and trying to make a difference, and how you can do that in a local community setting. And so I'm looking forward to that. Also, March 2nd, which is a couple days later, I will be the MC for the Lewis County Republican Lincoln Day Dinner. And March 9th, I'll be the MC for the Kitsap County Lincoln Day Dinner. I know on, I think June 1st, I will be speaking at the Skagit County Republicans. And I know I have some other events coming up in the summer, but those are just a kind of a snapshot of what's coming. If you do want to have me come out and speak to a group or to help organize any activists where you live, I'm happy to do that. All I ask is that people kind of organize, that just try to organize a group and just have a place where I can come and speak to you. It's usually, if it's just activists and we're focused on, trying to organize and be focused on making an impact in the community, groups of 10, 15, 20 is pretty solid. If it's a public presentation to a larger group, it usually is a little bit more efficient if it's, 30 people or more. It's up to about 200 or so. Let me know if you got more than 200, because then the planning for that's a little bit different on my side. But I'm happy to come out and do these presentations. And I love training activists and helping people hopefully become a little more effective when they're in public office or when they're trying to make an impact in the local community. Today we did about 4 videos that I recorded already, and I'll probably touch on some of the same subjects that I've already recorded a video for, but there's a lot going on actually, and a lot has happened. And even though I was bouncing all over the northwest of Washington last week, while you're doing that, there's always things just keep going and things keep happening. One thing before I get into the Ask Me Anything, and this is an Ask Me Anything video, so don't forget to ask questions. Just as a real quick reminder, I'll be kind of looking at the screen to make it easier for me. Make sure you say @WeTheGoverned. It just makes it easier for me to see that it's a question there. Every single time I do this, I have people come back to me later saying, "Hey, you didn't answer my questions." And generally, I feel like I'm doing a pretty decent job answering all the questions that you post up there. You may not like my answer, but I'm trying to answer the questions, and I'm really not trying to ignore any that are up there. So if you do that, just try to make sure it's clearly a question, because what happens in the comment stream is that as these comments are starting to pop up, people will be making commentary back and forth, and that doesn't really give me a question that I can answer. And sometimes I'll jump in and make comments, but generally that's just going to be how it works in a way that's a little bit more efficient. And so make sure that you indicate that if you do that, just easier for me to spot the question there. Quick point that I wanted to make here, and this is, I did do a video on this that'll launch in a couple days, but for a live stream audience, I'll kind of give you a preview on it because I think it's a big deal. These initiatives are a super significant and dramatic event that has occurred in Washington State. I don't think people quite realize, at least I don't think the average person has necessarily grasped how significant that this is. Even when I say average, I'm talking political insiders. I don't think that there's a full understanding yet as to how significant this really is. Never in state history have we ever had 6 initiatives to the legislature like this come out and be on the ballot in the way that they're going to be this year. Certainly we've never had even remotely close to a large number of conservative-oriented initiatives all at the same time. The other thing that's interesting about it, I think we have 6 coming out. There were, I think, 3 one time back in early 70s. I mean, that's the last time. Usually it was a rare thing to even have more than one. The largest signature gathering effort, largest conservative signature gathering effort for sure in American history has occurred in Washington State, and the result of that's going to be these initiatives in November. And all 6 of those are, they don't change the world, but they're significant steps in a better direction, I believe. And so I think it's worth just pointing out that there's kind of this cascade effect that's already occurred. One of the things that happened just last Friday is that Senator Peterson, who's his nickname is Jamie the Taxman Peterson. He's a Democrat, of course, from Seattle. His biggest mission in life and primary goal and reason for existing, apparently, is to just simply find excuses and justifications to jack up taxes. because the rapaciousness and greed of government is absolutely insatiable. There's no way you can possibly give government enough money. And the best way to understand how government operates when it comes to your tax dollars, just think of a big bonfire, and they just want you to throw more and more in there. And it'll get so big they just want to burn down the forest. They just can't help themselves. It can never be quenched. All you can do is really shrink the amount of money you give them, because government doesn't get better the more money you give it. And J.B. Peterson decided there was a bill everybody thought it was going to be moving forward, had every single local government grifting operation all excited about it, and it was Senate Bill 5770, and it was the bill that was going to basically allow local governments to kind of break through from that 1% limitation on property tax increases and shift it up to 3%. So 3 times as big as it has been for about the last 15 years or so, a little bit longer actually. We've had that restriction on property tax increases, which is good. And this is being done, by the way, right in the middle of a time period in which our bloated state government has been getting excess amounts of money to squander and waste at every opportunity. In fact, our state government has squandered and wasted billions of dollars just in the last few years, sometimes on the stupidest things you can ever imagine, losing $600 million of the unemployment security project, diverting $430 million out of COVID money from the feds, and instead diverting it away from people that they supposedly claimed they were going to help, and then instead sent it to illegal immigrants, and just all kinds of ridiculous things. I mean, those are just 2 big highlights that together add up to $1 billion, your tax dollars, that has been flushed completely down the drain to no benefit. But there's certainly a lot more than that that's going on. But one of the things that Senator Peterson indicated is that what really pushed him back and made him decide to drop it, and he was a prime sponsor of this, was the fact that these initiatives are on the ballot. There's a strong appetite to cut taxes on the regular citizens. There's certainly headwinds against tax increases in the state. People are frustrated with inflation and the cost of living. And then, of course, the egregious incompetence of government, the display they put on every single day, anybody that bothers to interact with them. And extracting more cash from us is the wrong time. Plus, I would say that the 9,500 plus people that decided to log in and indicate how angry they were with that proposal, that combination of 2 things essentially killed the tax increase. And that was a big deal. I mean, there's a lot of stupid ideas that legislators will propose every year in Olympia that never go anywhere. It sounds good. They do it for fundraising purposes or to virtue signal that they are down with the struggle, but they're not going to go anywhere. And that was one that I kind of thought, because of the momentum behind it with all the internal established Democrat and leftist kind of special interests, that they would definitely push that one through. And it doesn't look like, I mean, it's dead. It's completely dead now. And I think the initiatives have driven that. The other thing to point out is that the initiatives have already sucked hundreds of thousands, probably getting close to $1 million out of the left already, just on not just on SEIU's forlorn hope last fall or last winter, in the December time, trying to convince people not to sign or to basically interfere with the signature gathering process, which all that money was wasted. But also in these study groups, they're having these fake messaging, basically they get a bunch of people together. They're testing out messaging to try to defeat the initiatives. And they're spending a ton of money on that. Now, mainly they're doing that because the consultant class on the left side of things, they see this as an opportunity to extract a lot of cash from their donors. And so they're out there running these, study groups and messaging meetings and trying to find some way to message against these initiatives. And it's hard. One of the things I think they're cutting, it's interesting, I've been told that they're cutting out, they're not even trying to message against the police pursuit and the parental transparency or even the no income tax initiatives. They're just focusing on the 3 initiatives that very clearly cut off. Even though the Democrats, by the way, hate all of them, or at least the Democrat Party officially hates all of them, they're trying to figure out messaging on the capital gains tax repeal, the cap and tax scam that they have for that Inslee's carbon tax scam that increases the cost of fuel for everybody in the state and heating oil and everything else, and then also the giving people the option to opt out of the long-term healthcare scam. So all 3 of these are the ones that they're mostly messaging on because these are the ones that provide cash flow into all these grifting operations that are basically already, at the feeding trough trying to get this money. And so I think that all that's happening right now, and they're spending a ton of money on this, and it hasn't even started yet. So I would expect to see the results of all this money they're squandering in this messaging process. I don't think it's as easy as they were originally hoping it to be. And they're doing a really poor job based on the people I know who are there, who've gone through some of these focus group studies, that I think they're just going to try to lie to their donors to get a bunch of money for a campaign that they plan to squander millions of dollars on, that's actually done very poorly. So and with very little good information. So we'll see what happens. But I'm under the impression right now that this is a poor use of funding, and which is great. I want them to waste all the money they can, but it's really the big impact of these initiatives, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, the hardest problem, the biggest problem I think the Democrats have on this is that a lot of their own voters want these initiatives, and they're afraid to even talk about the actual title of the initiatives because they're clearly very positively received, and I think most people are going to vote for them. So all this is going on. It's a chaotic time. One of the other things I was going to mention, because I've talked about this occasionally, and before I jump in with the Ask Me Anything, so make sure you get your questions up here, was to give you just a quick update on some of the issues that are related to the campaign finance complaints. If you go to the pdc.wa.gov, if you go to that website and pdc.wa.gov, type in or click on the For Public, and then look at the enforcement cases. If you type in my name under complainant, you'll see there's about 750 complaints or so. There's actually a lot more than that I filed, but that's the way the PDC's organized it. And you can see everything. What I'm telling you is something you can easily validate or check. But when you go there, look under investigation if you look under status, you say investigation of possible violations, you will see about 33 cases that are currently still under investigation. Most of these are based on complaints that I filed late last year. Some of them are really old, and there's a bunch of these that will probably be resolved, I would expect, over the next few months. There's Representative Melanie Morgan, no relation, but she's a Democrat legislator out of the 29th Leg District in Tacoma, and she had just botched everything. I mean, it's the volume of late filings that she's doing now, because I'd filed this complaint originally about all the missing funds, is amazing. I mean, it's ridiculous, and so it's interesting to see where. I'm not sure what the result of that's going to be, but it's fairly significant. And I did just get the Washington Education Association PAC fined last week. Small fine, but they still were hit. Mainly they were trying, that particular one, because there's a couple other investigations that are open right now into the WA based on complaints I filed. But that one that they were fined on was simply the effort to try to conceal and hide their attorney fees from the public that they're spending dealing with the complaints that I filed and against them, and their effort to fight with the PDC and try to get out of paying a fine, which didn't work. They did have to pay a fine, but the bigger complaints, I think, are actually the ones that are still being investigated. Linda Farmer, who is being investigated still, it's an open case right now. She's the current auditor for Pierce County. The Public School Employees of Washington PAC, I don't even remember what they did, but I filed that complaint. Sydney Moore, who is a former Berrien City Council member. Thank you, people of Berrien, for kicking her out. Island County Democratic Party. Cower Satwinder, I can't remember what office that guy ran for, but he was seriously in trouble. Clean and Prosperous America PAC that was sponsored by David Giuliani. That was an interesting one. It says it's still open. I kind of thought they'd resolved it, but it looks like it's still open. Citizens for Spokane Schools PAC. Citizens for Lopez Solid Waste Levy PAC. That one I hit a couple years ago and they got in trouble. I don't know why they keep violating the law, but they can't help themselves. Sam Wershing and Evan Merritt. I think Evan Merritt's up in Snohomish County. I think that's the guy that didn't report his campaign at all. The Okanagan County Democrats, which I guess is convenient since I'm going to be out there speaking pretty soon. Retired Public Employees Council of Washington. Washington State 16th Legislative District Democrats, the Bethel Citizens Committee for School Support, Kennewick, Kitsap, you get it. I mean, Grays Harbor Democrats, Thurston County Democrats. Franklin County Democrats, there's a theme, but yeah, there's a lot of them that are in trouble and they're under current investigation. I'm actually behind on filing a lot of complaints, and I do mean to catch up on a bunch of them, a couple hundred roughly that I've got kind of drafted out, but it's just, and I file them when I'm stuck at coffee shops or if my car breaks down the side of the road, which has been common lately. Gives me enough time, I can get online and file some more complaints, but I just need to catch up. I have a bunch more to go. So there's a lot happening out there, and I anticipate that I'll be able to do some more stories as several of these groups get fined, or at least there's more sanctions on them than just a warning letter. I've been doing the Violator of the Week periodically, and I should just try to catch up on that. I've had so many that were, I think I'm up to 286 right now. So groups, PACs, judges, groups like that have all been in trouble based on the complaints I filed. So anyway, a lot of stuff's going on out there. So let's get some of your questions. Sorry we took that long for that opening monologue and didn't mean to do that. Let's jump right in. There was an odd question that a stolen account, which is a great name. There was an odd question that that you had here about saying, what were attorneys called before the War of Independence? The funny thing is somebody else jumped on and said solicitors, which would have been my answer, but I think they mainly called attorneys lawyers back then. There was also, I know there's a term called regulators, which some people, I think at the time, the way they looked at the law and people who practiced the law at the time was a little different back then than the way we look at it now. And so that was an interesting question, but so hopefully that's my answer at this point in time. Lawyers is what they typically would call them, not attorneys. Another question here, Jason, will the legal challenges to the FFL killer bill be successful compared to the other challenges? Good question, and I don't know. It really depends. I mean, they being obviously the anti-gun billionaires and the Democrats and all that are really focused on trying to do everything they can to make firearm ownership as expensive as possible right now, and that is part of the process. Some of that stuff will change with the federal. I think when the federal government comes in, but I think they're going to have to recognize that they're going to just have to downsize or even eliminate the ATF. I'm not entirely sure that agency seems like it's out of control, and there's some overlapping enforcement problems with the way the law is written and then the people that are basically running it. This is the issue. I mean, you have something called regulatory capture, right? Well, the regulatory capture will happen when you capture it, when the people who are trying to destroy a given activity, like firearm ownership in this case, basically are captured by those who they capture that agency. And so they're essentially using it as their regulatory vehicle to harm you. This kind of thing happens actually even in our state, in Washington, in the level like with hunting rights right now, the appointments that Inslee has made to the Washington Wildlife Commission, and that basically oversees hunting regulations. A lot of the ones he's just appointed are terrible. I mean, these are horrible people, and they hate hunting. And so their goal when they get in there isn't to regulate it, it's to destroy it. And so, and that has historically not been how some of these agencies that were originally set up to kind of manage processes like that, or an element of enforcement. For the first time, in 100 years in Washington State, right? They've got this agency they've got people who are appointed to that commission whose goal is to destroy all hunting instead of actually manage, the process. And there's no group that's more effective at destroying the environment than the Democrat left. I mean, they're really good at destroying the environment. They seem to be focused on that. And they're demonstrating all the time with their wildlife management is one of the ways that they're doing this. And the same thing I think happens with how the ATF deals with firearm ownership and, of course, the Second Amendment issues. Andrea, you got a question here. So Washington made the opinion page of the Wall Street Journal on February 5th about the legislature wanting to regulate tires and make them more expensive and less safe because of climate change. Yeah, thoughts. Good point, Andrew. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, that was a stupid bill, completely insane. And it's amazing to me the Wall Street Journal actually paid attention to Washington. One of the things that I think it's hard to remember, and I only kind of know this a little bit, just my experience going to college in New York City for 4 years, to the East Coast, which is where most of this political elite, the dominant kind of political class, economic and political class, all live. They view Washington as a total backwater. It has, there's going to be, they really don't think that Washington's that important oftentimes. And so what's, I think, missed frequently is the fact that Washington oftentimes sets the trend for other policies and changes in the state or in the country. A lot of ideas come out of Washington, good and bad. And so, but it's viewed as like this distant, remote, Hicks and the Sticks kind of rural place that nobody in D.C. tends to pay attention to. So when the Wall Street Journal comes out with an opinion piece like that on an insane piece of legislation the Democrats are attached to out here, I think that's a good thing. Putting attention on craziness is never a bad idea, so I like it when they do that. There's another question here from Dona XGO too, but is there any movement on some of our judiciary activists who are practicing catch and release? Sort of. There is, and I anticipate there being some races for judge seats this year. But one of the challenges, I think, that when you're dealing with judiciary and you're trying to say, okay, I need to replace the judges who, hug a thug, right? They want to take the most violent criminal they can possibly find and release them and make sure that they don't serve any jail time and make sure they victimize more people. No judge is going to admit that, but a lot of them have that behavior and attitude with the policies that they implement, mainly with how they decide on sentencing. And so, and then just letting them go bail, no bail, letting them out early, no matter how much violence they commit. It's just throwing these people back out into the streets so they can hurt and kill more people. We don't do a very good job in the state, at least not one that I'm clearly aware of, where we're really documenting specifically by name who the judges are that are choosing to do this. Now, it's important you also look at the prosecutors, right? Because the prosecutors choosing not to prosecute crimes or making obviously ridiculous plea bargain settlements with really bad guys, that you have all the evidence that's been prepped up by the law enforcement to put them away for a decent amount of time. Those we need to really be identifying these people really clearly out in the open by name, by case, and document it. But people don't tend to pay attention at that level of detail, and this is a deficiency that exists. I mean, there's a vacuum here, and we need to spend some time documenting this really well. And it's all public information, so these judges and these prosecutors are giving us the information we need. We need to be extracting that information and providing it to a wider public, because most of the time nobody knows who those judges are when they're running for office. It's something we really need to do. There's a question here from Stephanie. I saw an article, I'm presuming Inslee's planning on connecting the carbon tax program with California to keep it from being undone. I can't read the article due to non-subscribed. Well, Stephanie, you don't have to necessarily look at that article. There's actually quite a few of them out there. And yes, that's been a plan that Inslee's had. And one of the problems, of course, that Inslee is substantially angry about, and you should be aware of this, and the reason why he hates the initiatives is that it probably causes that entire house of cards to come crashing down if the initiative passes, and it's incredibly popular right now. So they know, they being the Democrats and the lefty groups that are going to be, and all these grifters that are already making a lot of money off of the fake carbon tax scam, jacking up the cost of your propane or your natural gas or your fuel. They know that this is popular. People don't want to increase their cost of living. And so you have to just do a massive job trying to lie to them to convince them not to vote for this. Right now, it's super popular. Over half the people that signed the initiative in the first place were Democrats. So these things are popular. If it passes and becomes law, it's going to crash the entire carbon tax scam program, not just in our state, but in a lot of others as well. Because if one state doesn't do it and the others do, right, it puts them at a disadvantage, competitive disadvantage. Everybody knows that. That's why Inslee was trying to coordinate with Newsom and Oregon. That's why they were so annoyed when 1631, which was one of the carbon tax initiatives that the billionaires funded to try to get it to pass, failed at the ballot. despite what they spent $30 million on it. It was unbelievable. So, and it still failed. And so Inslee had to push it through the legislature where you could get enough Democrats to think it was a good idea. This is one of those things where I don't believe any Republicans joined them. So there was a distinction and difference between Republicans and Democrats on this issue for sure. Well, now it's at risk with these initiatives, and he knows it. So his scramble to try to still have something, some kind of legacy, because Inslee's really leaving the governor's office with not a legacy that's going to be that any governor would, any normal person would be proud of. More people die of drug addiction now than ever before. Overdose deaths are up, crime is up, inflation's up, taxes are up, blow to government's big. Businesses have left. There's nothing that Inslee can point to other than this carbon tax scheme. Apparently, that's the thing he's proud of. So, great. He's going to hitch his wagon to this, probably because he's planning to make some money in some way afterwards, get paid by one of these companies that's receiving some of the tax dollars, the $1.3 billion or so that I think it's $1.5 billion actually, that they're extracting just from this one stupid, wasteful, useless tax. So Inslee's probably got a job plan associated with it, and that could fall apart for him. So selfishly, he's probably disappointed in that as well. But this initiative puts it all at risk, and he knows it. And that's why Inslee was freaking out so much and overreacting and coming unglued and being incredibly unprofessional. Not that he's ever been professional, but just a lot of that's going on right now. So it's kind of a big deal. Let's see. Jason, how's the enrollment at Washington State University in Evergreen going? Is it getting any better? I wanted to go to WSU, but Clark College is significantly cheaper. Well, Evergreen has been generally collapsing. I know last I checked, they had about a 60% collapse in enrollment. It kind of depends on where you start that measurement, but it's certainly a downward spiral. They celebrate when it doesn't, when they don't dive another 20% or so each year. So I think they're trying to lift it up. They've had about 4 rounds of staff layoffs over the last couple of years. Evergreen College is probably the worst college anybody could ever attend in America today. One of the most miserable places to go to school. Highest rate of freshmen that transfer out if they've accidentally made the mistake of going there. They have no standards, right? So they'll accept anything. If you're a fake person that just can take out a loan, you're accepted. They don't care about. There's no restrictions on anybody. So you do get a lot of people that have failed in high school, perhaps, and they need to turn their life around. And Evergreen's been that initial stepping stone, but they can get in there and then quickly transfer into a real college as fast as they can. So I think Evergreen's doomed. If a Republican were to get elected as governor, I think one of the first things I would do is shut Evergreen down. I mean, put it out of its misery. There's no reason to have it there any longer. WSU has suffered enrollment drops as well, Washington State University, but not as much. And mainly, I don't know how quantifiable that is yet. So I'm not totally sure what those are. I just know that it used to be it would be hard to get a dorm, right? And they had empty dorms recently, just this last year. So this is really, I think that may just be a victim of a lot of the trend with colleges today. I have kids coming out and kind of looking at their potential college prospects. They're at that age, and frankly, there's hundreds of thousands of fewer kids going to college today than there were not that long ago. Mostly, I think you look at the debt that students get, and it's just not worth it, right? It's a crazy amount that you're spending for a very low return for that piece of paper. So why would you want to come out with a couple $100,000 in debt just to that, and especially when it doesn't really help you get a good job that pays enough to pay back the loans? So a lot of people, I think, are running the math on that, realizing it's not a good deal. The wokester, kind of nasty, diversity, inclusion, equity sort of world is less attractive for a lot of people, too. It's miserable to be in. Nobody wants to always live in misery, and the colleges kind of create that environment where they're pushing for that real political indoctrination and virtue signaling and this high-stress, kind of high-drama environment. That's not so interesting. And so it's, I think those are and people are just, I think a lot of colleges are going to go bankrupt over the next few years. I don't think WSU would, because it is state funded and it's a land grant school as well. So there's some more resources behind it. But It wouldn't surprise me if they started doing staff layoffs. You've seen other staff layoffs at even some of the private schools that are here. So there's a lot of changes, I think, that are going on in this environment. And it's just kind of worth noting that that's what's happening. Let's see. There's a question below there, SB 5770, which I just talked about, actually. Well, what about this is something that we need to look at? Well, you don't need to look at it any longer. It's gone. So they dropped it. Maybe it's a bad idea that comes around and sticks around kind of like a disease. So I'm sure that the Democrats will look to try to extract more property tax in the future if they can. And that bill was one of the ones they were going to use as a vehicle to do that, but it's gone now. R. Hess, how can I get to be an observer for the 2024 elections and the local level? That's a great question. Thank you for asking that, actually. You can go and be an observer in your local auditor's office. Just contact the auditor and let them know you want to be an observer. Typically, and it does depend which county you're in as to how easy it is to become an observer, but they basically put on observer training. And it's not a difficult class, and it's relatively easy to go through. Usually, they're going to have you be affiliated with the Democrats or the Republicans, either one or the other. And they do that because it's an adversarial. You're having elections. Elections are adversarial, meaning that there's more than one choice, at least in theory. And so if you're going to be an observer, then usually you pick your poison and you're saying, okay, I'm a Republican. Probably if you're watching the show, you'd be more likely to be a Republican, and you get to observe as a Republican. You can have neutral observers. Sometimes the League of Women Voters, they lie and they pretend to be a neutral observer. Of course, they aren't. They're really a left-leaning organization tied to the Democrats, but that was a pretense they could come up with a while ago. It doesn't really apply to them anymore, but you go in there and you are observing the counting, the handling, the processing. It used to be less onerous than it is now because you used to be able to have elections in one day. Nowadays, we have the multi-week, long, drawn-out, distorted, beyond all recognition election process in Washington. So you're in there for a long time. So it's a little bit more of a commitment now. But anybody can do it. I do strongly recommend, though, if you want to kind of coordinate, I would work with your local party, local county party, and say, hey, I want to be an observer. Who do I talk to? If they aren't responding, go directly to the auditor. Don't wait for the party to get back to you, but go directly to the auditor. Get signed up now. Practice at the primary, which is in August. Or that's probably the best time. Practice then, so you kind of get an experience of what it's like, and then the real chaos world. Because I just feel like this election in 2024 is going to be crazy. But at least that would be the process you go through. I hope I answered that question correctly, or at least adequately for you to understand how I responded. I feel like I went around that one a little bit too much. Scenario, Frankenstein, you're asking, how do we move ahead with either creating Liberty State or joining Idaho? I propose Eastern and Southwest Washington create Liberty State. Well, the how is out there. I mean, I think they've described this. I mean, you see the same thing going on with Eastern Oregon, but it requires the legislatures, the state legislatures, to agree and at some point in time approve it along the way. And if you don't get them to agree, it's not going to happen. It's happened before, kind of, right? But it hasn't really happened since West Virginia. I realize there's some longer stories and some more obscure issues, but we've even tried this in our state with counties dividing up or splitting. And that's at least a process. It's a little bit clear, even if it's vague. At least there's a history that it's been done before. But taking part of a state and giving it to another is a challenge in this, just because of all the people you have to have that sign off on it. And I believe that includes congressional action. So you're always going to have one side that feels like they benefit from it and the other side that feels like they don't benefit from it. And that's what makes it hard, is one side's going to block it from the other. So it's not an easy process. It should be more easy, probably. The other thing I want to remind you is that, Idaho, Wyoming, none of these places are utopias. You're not going to be able to escape any of the leftism that's going on in this country unless you defeat it where you live. That's just a fact. When I talk to Republicans in Idaho, especially some of the elected officials, they're delusional and totally clueless and not aware of what's actually going on. I'm stunned. You look at the legislature in Wyoming; it's 85% Republican and population. Right? I don't even know how a Democrat would be elected there typically. And despite that, they still can't get at anything effective done. Now, you can say they don't have as many crazies and they aren't pushing some of the same crazy policies you'll see in San Francisco or Seattle or Portland. It's true. But despite that, they're still not actually fixing the problems that are coming their way and existing right now in their cities and their state. And they're just clueless about it. And so I just don't think you're going to be able to escape. So I would put some energy into fixing the problem. If you live in Eastern Washington, start focusing on Spokane. You got a complete clown council there of corrupt people that just got elected, and it's going to take some work to clean up Spokane, for example. The Cristiano, you got a question. Why do we have so many police departments again? Why can't we have a single force? Well, let me just address that, I guess. I don't think saying that you have so many police departments, I'm not totally sure that I know what you're asking. Historically, at least the way Washington State was structured, every county has a sheriff's office. So I'm presuming that the 39 sheriff departments would be something that'd be consistent and okay with you as far as having law enforcement and a jurisdictional boundary. The city law enforcement, the city of Tacoma or Federal Way or Seattle or such, those places, setting up your own city, that's also a fairly long history of cities having their own local law enforcement there. In some cases, if you're in a smaller city, you might be contracting out with the sheriff's department for local officers. I know that happens a lot in King County. But for the most, I'm not entirely sure what you're talking about. If what you're talking about is that you have militarized federal and state agencies that have law enforcement and they're armed and they're each one's allowed, like the HUD, some of these other agencies that do that, Department of Agriculture, and you want to reverse that out. I'm all for that. I totally agree with it. I think the over militarization and confusion of bureaucracies that have become weaponized for no good reason, and certainly no freedom and liberty oriented reason, and certainly not good for the public at all. I completely support getting rid of all of the ability of those agencies to operate with any kind of police powers whatsoever. And I think that if there's something like a violation that merits the intervention, that they should defer to local law enforcement to make that intervention if it's going to happen. I don't know if I've answered that question correctly for you or not, but that's what I would do. So that's my answer there. Let's see. Alan Van Cleve. I saw Reichert speaking yesterday, and when asked to debate Byrd, he angrily and defiantly answered Byrd was an unqualified candidate. What are your thoughts on an opponent not debating another in public? Good question. I'm going to tell you something. I like debating, so I would do it. I like to debate. I would enjoy debating. My guess, though, is that if I was running against somebody, my guess is they probably wouldn't want to debate me most of the time. And so if they could avoid it, they would. And so usually the history of political debates is that the people who feel like they have something to gain from the debate want the debate, and the other one who feels like they don't have something to gain isn't going to want to debate. The last real gubernatorial debates that we had in Washington in 2020, most of those were because you had so many candidates, right? You had to make this decision of who was going to debate. And of course, once Culp got through, and then you had Culp versus Inslee. Inslee didn't really want to debate, but he was kind of shamed into debating at least once. The intramural debating is a little bit more challenging because there's nothing that any party's going to have to hold over your head. So the closest thing you're going to get to a debate, most likely. And again, keep in mind, I was the guy came out a while ago. I was going to moderate a debate between Reichert and Byrd in Pierce County. And that had there had been some discussion on that. And that fell apart for a variety of other reasons. But I like debates. I like moderating debates. I like debates to be fair and very clear, and the opportunity for both candidates, or if there's more than two, three candidates, however many you got, to be able to present their side in an effective way. I don't like gotcha debates the way that they've organized the Republican national debates, like for the non-Trump candidates. I thought that those were just clown shows, the way they pitched. You had moderators that were essentially just trying to pitch people against each other because all the moderators hated the Republicans in general. And so what they were trying to do is make everybody look like a bunch of idiots, which is easy to do if you're going to be a moderator in that position and trying to needle people to fight each other. It'd be like putting me in charge of the Democrat debate. I would love that. That'd be fun, but I don't think the Democrats would like the result of that. So, that would be the kind of thing that you have to remember with these debates. You can't control what politicians are going to do. You really can't. You can ask them, please debate. I want you to debate. I want you to, contrast the two people. But the closest thing I think you're going to get to that is the April Republican convention when it comes to statewide office holders. Now, keep in mind, at this point in time, at least at the Republican convention, you have two Republicans that are running for office, so they're going to be able to debate, or at least debate's the wrong term. They're going to be able to present themselves to Republican PCOs and activists at the state party. You also have at least 3 Republicans that are on the ballot for OSPI, Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. I think that's going to be one that there's a fairly strong debate on. The debate is the wrong term again, just a contrast. You got a number of candidates you can choose from, and they can present themselves. Then you're going to have Public Lands Commissioner, perhaps. You have 2, I think, Republicans running there. One who's run before, and Jamie Herrera Butler, Sue Peterson and Jamie Herrera Butler. I think both of them can present themselves at the state party meeting. You have a few others where there's only one Republican. But again, filing week is May, so we don't know for sure who's going to be on. But I like debates. I always have. And I think we need more of them. But maybe that's just me. And I don't understand politicians that don't want to debate. But that, again, is probably just me. Let's see. Good question. Poet999. Whatever happened to the investigation of mysterious white powder that closed ballot counters last November? Yeah, great question. From everything I've been told, they've obviously not bothered to figure out who actually sent it. I don't know how serious they really are in figuring that out. There was fentanyl in some of it, right? I don't know if that was just a test run to see how much disruption they could have in trying to cause problems. I would expect that the 2024 election that we have is just going to have chaos like that everywhere. Right now, I'm not aware of any advanced elements to that investigation. I'm sure they'll tell you that it's still open, but I'm not aware of anything actually having happened. Let's see. Jack, what do you think about a one-for-one policy when it comes to making new laws? Every new law must mean an old law has to go. Love that idea. I've always liked that idea. In fact, if I would say every new law, maybe 4 or 5 old laws have to go. Related to that, some of the discussions that we've had from a liberty and freedom-oriented perspective, when we're looking at the escalating and rapidly increasing ridiculousness of both regulation and at the RCW sort of state pass law level, but also at the administrative level, the WAC level, or even below administrative law in general. I think that we have to force every single one of those administrative laws to come up for regular review and official voting by elected officials. If we did that, I think that we would find this vast trove of ridiculous and absurd regulatory structures and confusing, archaic stuff really would shrink down and be pretty narrowed and focused on at least the critical parts of whatever regulatory structure that exists there. Mostly these things happen because of the laziness and political cowardice of politicians. Their preference is to purposely pass bills that are vague in nature and unclear and convoluted and hundreds of pages and very long, so that they can offload the problems onto the bureaucracy, give them basically an open door to invent all kinds of weird interpretations, legal interpretations, which of course gets litigated later on. You and I end up paying for that one way or the other. And with no accountability, then they can just blame the bureaucracy. Say, oh, when I passed that, this is what it meant. But of course, the poorly worded and ridiculous pieces, the bills that they put out, encourage that type of behavior. And it's worse in D.C. than it is the state level, but it's bad in both places. So really, I think you could get some benefit also out of shrinking the size, like the maximum size of a piece of legislation. If it's so awesome, you can break it in a couple parts and do it separately. If you can't explain it in a reasonable period of time and outline it properly in that reasonable period of time, then it's too long. If you can restrict the ability of agencies to add a lot more interpretation. There's some other things I think that you could do to also kind of achieve that same direction in fixing kind of the bloat of regulatory reform and especially administrative law. So I don't know if I really answered your question there. But I'm on the same page with you. I don't know if 1 for 1, it could be 1 for 2, right? Take away 2 for every one that you have there, at least for some period of time. Ryan Berg, any motion on the King County elections, Julie Weiss election investigation from last August? Great question. Not really, other than it was a fiasco. It was her fault. Her lack of transparency and I think really dishonesty in relating just the chaos internally in her department is troubling. She's a horrible elections administrator. I mean, I'm sure you can find somebody worse. It's King County, so you probably could, but she's not a good person in there. They do have some good people that work there. Just because the head person's terrible doesn't mean the employees are all bad. But King County is one of those places where you really need a microscope everywhere. Trust nothing, believe nothing, look at everything, and really observe closely. Remember, the only reason we even knew about that was because of an activist who is a longtime observer up there in King County, and that's how she got caught. So what I'm hoping is that some of the stuff, it makes them be a little bit better, cross their T's and dot their I's a little bit, because as much as she may still be there, she is not, she's feeling much more pressure and attention than she ever has in her entire existence right now, and that's a good thing, I think. Question here. What about vaccine requirements for attending college? This is Franklin asking the question. Well, I think it's a terrible idea. Whitman right now, I know, requires you to have a vaccine before you go to college. I just think it's ridiculous. And they used to, so colleges have always required some vaccines, right? Measles, mumps, rubella, it used to be smallpox. They do have some requirements, but you could also opt out of those. There was exemptions, which not a lot of people took, but at least you had the option. Now with the whole chaos that's been resulting and lack of trust, deserved lack of trust in the medical system and the people who, probably a lot of people used to trust, and now they realize that they're just as politicized as anyone else. I think it's a terrible idea to have vaccine requirements for attending college, or at least make them so that there's no way to opt out of them. So anyway, that's the issue there. Penn the Mighty have a question. Have you ever watched any of James Lindsay's new discourses? No, I haven't. Don't know anything about it. So, which isn't surprising. There's a ton of stuff out there. I don't watch every single channel that is out there on everything. So I'm missing that one. Donald Larson got a question. Can we get an initiative that requires the AG to pay the legal costs for litigants defending their 2A rights and return the burden of proof onto the government? And the answer to that is yes, you can. It's not just an initiative. You could pass that as a law as well. The AG would fight you tooth and nail, but it's almost, so there is a law, for example, if you use a firearm in self-defense, and that's your defense as to why you used it. Criminal attacked you, you had to shoot him, and your local prosecutor decided that he was going to charge you. Well, he released all the violent criminals out of jail, and you prevail in that case, and you win. Prosecutors are obligated, and they have to pay you. So this is actually, it was one of the few things that prosecutors, if they lose, they have to pay all your attorney fees on. So, and that was done long, long ago just to discourage abusive prosecutors from harassing citizens who were defending themselves. I don't know when they started that, but it goes back probably many decades, because they've had that for a while. And they had that problem with prosecutors doing that back, I want to say, in the 60s and 70s. When the last kind of anti-gun wave was really going on. I want to say that's when they had it, and so there was a pushback against it. Anyway, I don't know if I've answered that question, but I hope I did. Did they make DMT legal in Washington State? I don't know. I have to check. That's something I'm not aware of. Let's see, Frugal Traveler. If Semi is endorsed in Spokane, your thoughts on Reichert not dropping out? I saw him speak yesterday, and he said he wouldn't drop out. Well, I mean, okay, so there's no obligation that a candidate of either party who doesn't receive the endorsement of their party, there's no obligation that they drop out. Obviously, it's a voluntary choice they got to make. The party endorsement is going to occur in April at the for the Republicans. It's going to occur at the Spokane party convention. So that's when they'll make their endorsements. The advantage of the endorsement from a candidate's perspective is that when the Republican Party provides promotions, advertising, talks about supporting candidates, maybe they send money out for those candidates. The way they've structured, and this is new, so this is new for Washington State, then only their endorsed candidates are the ones who get the funding and the money and all that stuff. I mean, it's an advantage that the candidates would have substantially. It's probably more of an advantage of the Democrat Party, but I don't think their rules are as strict or clear as what the Washington, the Washington State Republicans are trying to do. The Democrats just aren't that clear because they do mostly sabotage behind the scenes where they'll isolate a candidate they don't want running and basically tell them that they're going to destroy their political future, they're going to prevent them, they're going to destroy the future of everybody associated with them. The Democrats play much more aggressive hardball behind the scenes, and they back it up. They'll prevent any of those consultants from getting any money. They'll blackball them, all the consultants that help a candidate that the Democrats don't support. I've seen it happen before, and I've heard the stories about what they try to do. They're not always perfect either. I mean, they don't always get exactly what they want, but that's kind of their general approach that they've tried in the past on the Democrat side. But it's just not formalized in the same way, anyway, that the Republicans are attempting to be here, and the Republicans are trying to be a lot more open about it, just saying, hey, if you convince a majority of the PCOs and the activists that are able to vote at the Republican convention in Spokane, which will be thousands of them from every county in the state, if you can convince them that you are the optimal Republican candidate, then we're going to endorse you. And that doesn't require the other people to drop out, but they're going to have to make a decision as to why they don't want to drop out. The challenge that you're going to see in this case is with Byrd and Reichert most likely, and I'm trying to be realistic here, is both of them do have a following in the state. They do. And Reichert's raised a lot of money, and so probably from his perspective, that puts him in the catbird seat for the campaign. And it clearly is an advantage. You can see that in races in the past. I'm not telling you any super deep, dark secret. It's the reality. If you can't raise money, you're going to have a hard time with your campaign. So between the two of them, money is just one of the metrics that they use. So if you don't have money, then your metric is activists. And where that pays off for you is going to be at the state convention, arguably. So if you can get enough people to say, hey, I'm the candidate, I'm the choice at the state convention, which if I was in the Byrd campaign, that's what I'd be focused on. And Reichert's going to probably be doing the same thing. They're going to both be attempting to get that endorsement. Whoever gets the endorsement is, of course, going to call for the other person to step down. And the other person is I don't think in either case is probably going to step down, but that's going to be how it happens. I think that endorsement process may have less of an impact in that specific race than it will in some of the lesser known races. I think it'll have more of an impact in OSPI, the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, or maybe Lieutenant Governor gets a bunch of people to run for that position, or you get a bunch of people running a bunch of these other positions where the Republicans are going to be mostly worried, or at least attempting to avoid the scenario that they've done many times in the past, where they run a whole bunch of people, or just enough people with just about the same name recognition that they cancel each other out, and then you get two Democrats in the final ballot. We have a top two primary system. I've done a video on that. Please look at my video, the top two primary system and how it works. I wish every candidate would look at it before they start to run for office, because a lot of them don't seem to understand this, even now. Because of that, you have the potential, the top two primary system gives the potential that you could get two Democrats on that final ballot. And the Republicans are really good at self-immolating and taking each other out, because everybody's told by God and Jesus that they're going to run for office, and so they cancel each other out. I've seen it happen plenty of times, and the Democrats have done it to themselves before too. That's how Dwayne Davidson got in as state treasurer as a Republican in 2016, because the Democrats did it at that time. But the Democrats are a little more disciplined, so they're going to try to destroy anybody that potentially gets off their self-imposed reservation. Republicans don't do that. I'm kind of glad they don't do it, because you do want people to come in from the outside and surprise when they can, when they have that ability to come in and surprise. So whether somebody drops out, I'm not making a huge point of saying they have to, but you're making yourself. You're making it harder on yourself if you can't raise money and you don't get the endorsement. At that point in time, that's when I think with the Republicans more than anything else are looking at candidates like that with this process and saying, what are you doing, right? Jesus may very well have called you to run for office, but it doesn't mean he called you to win. Maybe it's just you're out there and going to blow up. So you have to make that decision for yourself. It's really hard you don't know what's going on with these campaigns. I try not to be, I'm not seeing everything that's happening. I got a pretty good sense of it, probably better than most. But, in the end, it's up to them. If they can pull it off without that, then they got to do it that way. Now, keep in mind, if there's only one Republican, at least one anyway, that comes through the primary, and you got a Republican versus Democrat, even if that Republican didn't get the endorsement before the primary, they're more likely they'll be able to get it then. So I don't know. You got some interesting scenarios there with both candidates running for governor in this case, and we'll just have to see what happens. Stephanie, is it possible to get back to voting day, same-day voting and counting, and can we get rid of the machines? Everything's possible. The question is, how do you get there? It's funny. This question comes up every single time I think I do a live stream. I'm pretty sure that I address it every single time. Yes, you can. The question is how, and the question is what leads to that outcome. More significantly, the question becomes mail-in voting. Is mail-in in our state, in Washington State, it's about mail-in voting mostly. So if you're looking at mail-in voting, then the question is what would, and they just recently had a big article, I don't remember who did it, but there was a big article recently about mail-in voting, and Democrats love it now, and Republicans are decreasing. They still dislike it. Cumulatively, people still like mail-in voting in our state anyway. Any poll that I've seen that's been done on this, any survey, any questions that get asked, it's less popular now than it used to be because more Republicans are waking up to the problems that are caused by it. But it still is viewed as a convenient way of voting. It's hard here. There's things you could still change to start to make it better, right, about showing ID. Also, something that both parties, actually, the majority of people in both parties like. So there's always confusion as to do we do it or not. Our state really doesn't do a good job of that at all. Same-day voting, one of the things would be that you could make it so that ballots would have to be received by Election Day and not later. So that would allow you to then count everything and be decided in one day. That would be a huge improvement over what we have, even with mail-in voting. Can we get rid of the machines? It depends what type of machines you're talking about. The machines that simply count, like you stick them in, you count, you do a hand recount, because they only do them in batches of like 250 at a time. You hand recount to audit and check as you go along. Is that type of machine bad? No, it isn't necessarily. But you sure as heck need to have an audit and transparent process to be able to go in there and verify that it's working exactly as it's supposed to work. And I think that like states that don't have paper ballots, some of the East Coast states and the Midwest states that do this pure electronic voting, that's insane. There's no way to actually audit or verify anything. At least in a state like ours, the paper already exists. You can do hand recounts. They're making it too difficult to do that, and they aren't allowing us to do enough of it. But the auditing potential process exists there. Got a lot of work to go on there. R. Hess, would you ever consider running for governor? No, I won't. And the only job I'll have, and I think I've talked about this, is that if a Republican governor gets elected and they want somebody to come in and downsize government, if they're serious about that, and they actually want somebody who's willing to come in and do that, I am your guy. I am happy to come in and fire thousands and probably tens of thousands, especially upper management people in state government, and also work on the downsizing efficiently and logically and intelligently a lot of these agencies that have just become bloated beyond all belief. There's certainly some logical things that could be recombined and downsized, buildings that could, there's just a lot of things you could really downsize to make government a lot more efficient, and efficient in a good way. And efficient meaning smaller, leaner, and less abusive than it currently exists. But you're going to have to downsize government. There is no choice. A Republican governor that gets elected and doesn't do that is a failure from right out of the gate. So if they're not willing to do that, then I don't want to work for them either. And but that's something I'd be willing to do, and that's a job I would take. I don't want to run for governor, and I don't even think I'd be that good at running for governor or even being governor. I'd like to be in that position though, to downsize it. I think that'd be good. Cristiano, you got a question here. How about the hike in car insurance that's coming up? Is that a political move by the exiting Inslee? It is, but I don't think it's Inslee. I think it has more to do with the insurance commissioner. Cristiano, I'll have to check into that, but I think it's going to be something else. You got a question down here, 5462 from TZ Burton. I'm not sure what bill that is, so I don't have all the bills memorized. Sometimes I do, but I don't on that one. Alan, question, Glenn, you're very bright and well-educated, thank you. Are you a fan of Thomas Sowell, and have you studied any of his work? Yes, I'm a total fan of Thomas Sowell. I love Thomas Sowell. I've loved Thomas Sowell since I was in college. He's great. I love his writings, his clarity. A huge fan. So anyway, that's my opinion on Thomas Sowell. Let's see, what are we looking at here? Yep. Okay, guys. Let me see if I can get a couple more questions in here. Correct. Yeah, Night Wolf. I know the question comes up. Don't disagree. We got a huge problem in election process. TZ Burton, what are the best bills to get out of committee this year, in your opinion? Well, we don't have a lot of good bills in committee. I would be happy if the legislature passes pretty much nothing at this point in time. So that'd be great if they just did nothing more. Really, the bills that they pass are just all about curdiness mostly, or taxes or something. I don't see too many good bills that are left. I should go back and double check, but I don't see too many good bills that are left in the legislature that should get out of committee. It'd be great if they most of the bills have died, which is good, but I'd be happy if Inslee has nothing left to sign. So, because usually they just do a bad job. So with that, guys, I think I'm going to make that my last question, and let me explain why. I've got a meeting with some activists today right after this, and it's about an hour drive from where I'm at here, and I'm trying to get out there at a reasonable time so we can have a productive meeting. So with that, I know sometimes I go a little bit longer, but I'm going to cut this a little bit short today. Thank you guys all for logging into the live stream. I'm always constantly amazed how many people are asking me questions, how many people log on and watch, and how many people watch this after the fact. I see there's somebody from New Zealand there. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate you watching from so far away. Love New Zealand. Spent a lot of time in South Island, a little bit of time on North Island. Haven't been out there in a number of years. Love to go again, especially now that hopefully you're not really suffering on the crazy lockdown crew that was in there before. But with that, we'll have another, I'm assuming Tuesday, I'm still on track for next week for another live stream. More videos coming out. I got 4 videos launching this week. I hope you enjoy them. Please give me your feedback. And if you're interested in having me come out and speak to your group, just get a big enough group together that justifies me coming out there. I pretty much go almost anywhere in Washington for sure, and I'll go outside of the state to groups that are organized and that I can provide some value for you. So I hope all's well, guys. Stay safe out there, pay attention, and remember, as always, the future belongs to those who show up. You got to show up to make a difference. Nobody's coming to save us, and nobody else is going to do it for you. You got to get out there and be involved. So with that, guys, we'll see you next week, and hope all's well. Thank you so much for watching.